Varadero, Cuba's major beach resort, is almost ready for it to reopen for international tourism. Beijing rejected Monday Canada's claim that two of its citizens were arbitrarily detained in China. Iranian Foreign Minister stated on Monday that the lifting of the international weapons embargo on October 18th will be remembered as the day of the U.S. defeat. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The hotel network in Cuba's major beach resort, Varadero, is almost ready to reopen for international tourism on October 15 as part of the peak tourist season for international markets. Officials from the Ministry of Tourism noted that during this period, Varadero will offer higher standards of comfort and, above all, better health safety due to the protocols implemented in Cuba against COVID-19. The Iberostar Varadero Hotel, also a property of Cubanacan and run by the Spanish company Iberostar, is ready for the winter peak season after strict biosecurity measures were taken, Deputy Director Lilian Ruiz said. In all areas in the hotel, which was certified by the International and Ibero-American Quality Awards, were improved, particularly with the new equipment for services, Ruiz pointed out. For his part, Juan Marquez, General Director of the Varadero Beach Resort by Barceló Complex, which belongs to the Grand Caribe Group, told Prensa Latina that Cuba is known and to handle the COVID-19 issue. Varadero is on the north coast of Cuba's western Matanzas province and is one of the 140 kilometers east of Havana and is considered the world's second best beach according to international surveys. And Cuba starts Monday to live a period of new normality fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister, Manuel Marrero, presented on national television a plan to start business and services with biosecurity measures in place. Marrero explained that this new stage, in which most of the country is, except for Havana, Ciego de Ávila, and Santi Spiritus provinces, lies on people's responsibility and the adoption of new habits and living patterns in order to learn how to coexist with the coronavirus. Despite the defense councils will be deactivated in the towns in which the new normality starts, provisions such as physical distancing, the use of the mask, and frequent hand washing continue. Cubans or foreign travelers arriving from abroad will be tested to detect the virus. The surveillance protocol will be applied in the place where they will stay in the country. Passengers entry from abroad will be allowed at this stage, while Cuban residents could travel abroad depending on flight seats availability. The national leader of the Darío Vivas Command, Jorge Rodríguez, assured that it is a priority for the candidates of the Great Patriotic Poll to debate with the people the effects of the blockade promoted by right-wing sectors. He recalled that the blockade against Venezuela is cruel and has caused damages even in middle-class sectors, and the opposition has turned it into a business because it got rich at the expense of it, adding that it's essential that everybody knows that the priority to parliamentary elections. It can only be described as cruel as human beings' plans to leave diabetic patients without insulin so that they die, or patients with kidney failure without dialysis. It's criminal, cruel, and inhumane, the national candidate from the Revolutionary Coalition said on Saturday. He pointed out that the truth must be shown to those who, over the last 8 months, have fought the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have to be compared with those who promoted the theft of Venezuela's assets and demanded an invasion. The upcoming October 18 general elections in Bolivia are at an extremely difficult and sensitive moment as a result of the statements of threat and hatred made by officials of Janine Áñez's de facto government. Spokespersons for the Bolivian de facto government have openly called for the use of state and paramilitary violence against social movements, the movement towards Socialist Party and presidential and vice presidential candidates Luis Arce and David Choquehuanca. The network of intellectuals, artists, and social movements in defense of humanity called upon democratic forces worldwide, and particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean, to monitor the events in Bolivia on a daily basis, to denounce the de facto government's dictatorial intentions, and also to call for nothing to interrupt Bolivia's return to democracy, which is the desire of the vast majority of Bolivians. And we will take a short break now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Beijing on Monday rejected Canada's claim that two of its citizens were arbitrarily detained in China and denounced Canada's arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou as arbitrary detention.
Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor are suspected of activities endangering China's national security. China's judicial organs are independently handling their cases, and as a result, the accusation of arbitrary detention cannot be pinned on China. What Canada has done to Meng Wanzhou is arbitrary detention. Canada's attempts to form international cliques to put pressure on China together are totally futile and counterproductive. Canada should give up its double standards and fully respect China's judicial sovereignty and stop releasing irresponsible remarks.
The European Union has announced a major building renovation project this week, seeking to cut down energy costs and pollution emissions while providing a big boost to the construction industry. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on Monday that the 27-nation bloc must speed up the pace of renovations if it's to meet climate change targets, and also most efforts will go to school, hospitals, and the social housing. The bloc is littered with buildings that fail to contain heat in winter and cannot keep people cool in summer, creating massive energy bills that sap local budgets but also pollute cities and the atmosphere.
That our buildings are responsible for 40% of our energy consumption. And some buildings are already being renovated or retrofitted, but at the current pace, it would take more than a century to bring emissions from our buildings to zeros. So we must speed up. And the good news is, by doing so, we can create new jobs in the construction sector and way beyond. So the renovation wave will focus specifically on schools, on hospitals, on social housing, for which local governments are usually responsible.
French Prime Minister Jean Castex has said that he expects further lockdowns across France as coronavirus infections continue to surge, and has recommended French people to limit their social life. There will be no relaxation of COVID-19 measures anytime soon, Prime Minister Jean Castex said while speaking to the French Info News channels on Monday morning. Castex took the opportunity to echo the words of the Health Minister Olivier Véran, reinforcing the seriousness of the situation and urging people not to have multiple dinner parties. Castex highlighted the probabilities of further local lockdowns until at least the end of the year. The local lockdowns are set to last for 15 days before being reviewed. Meanwhile, Castex assured that people must and the government's economic support will be also extended in line with local lockdowns measures. We go now to the United States. Our collaborator Abby Martin has the latest details on the current situation of the upcoming November 3rd presidential elections.
This is Abby Martin with your weekly election update for TeleSUR English. For as long as I've been voting, progressives have been lectured about the need to engage in the politics of lesser evilism. As the years went by, the candidates got worse and worse. Where now, in 2020, we are faced with the choice between two of the oldest nominees in U.S. history, Joe Biden, objectively a center-right political insider, and Donald Trump, a far-right extremist and reality star extraordinaire. The last 4 years have been surreal and incredibly dystopian, but this year takes the cake as one of the craziest. Let's just zoom in on the last month in election news. 3 weeks ago, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, culminating in the moment liberals have been scolding us about. See, for 2 decades or so, a gun has been pointed to the heads of progressives, telling us that this election, like every election, will come down to a woman's right to choose. They say, if we allow the Republicans to take control of the courts, Roe v. Wade will be overturned, setting us back an entire generation of progress. And in fact, that very scenario is unfolding right before our eyes, with Amy Coney Barrett, an anti-choice religious cultist, being pushed through by Trump right before the election. When actually faced with a fight to stop the extremists from seizing the highest court in the land, the Democrats just roll over. The so-called resistance party should be laying their bodies on the line to prevent this handmaiden lady from being appointed. All of a sudden, it's no longer an election issue. Instead of using their leverage like, I don't know, trying to shut down the government or promising to pack the court, Democrats have simply given up and are just hoping for the best. I guess it's no surprise considering Trump has already appointed a record number of lifetime federal judges, more than any other president at this point. And Democrats vote to confirm them 40% of the time. 2 weeks ago, Trump held a Rose Garden ceremony to celebrate his third SCOTUS nominee. And in the throngs of a global pandemic, sat people like sardines on top of each other, barely any wearing masks. Turns out a dozen or so people from the event became infected with COVID-19, including Donald Trump himself. And the next week was wild with media speculation. Everyone uncertain if Trump, a 74-year-old who lives on McDonald's and Diet Coke, was at death's door. He served a brief stint in the hospital before making a cinematic return to the White House, visibly gasping for air like a goldfish out of a bowl. But don't you dare wish him ill. Only thoughts and prayers, please, for a speedy recovery for the cartoon authoritarian at the helm of U.S. empire. The same person who wishes harm on his political enemies and threatens constant violence on the left with every utterance deserves nothing but our respect, guys. After the Democrats prayed him back to good health, he took to Twitter to downplay the virus and brag about his top-tier medical treatment, while tens of millions of Americans live in fear of getting sick because they have no health insurance. The election has now reached peak absurdity, with Trump running on the idea that he is immune to COVID-19, that it's nothing to worry about, that his catastrophic inaction is justified. You would think it would be a cakewalk to run against this man. All Biden needs to do is put a plan in effect to deal with the pandemic and give some semblance of relief to everyone suffering economically. But Biden is such a terrible candidate that his victory is far from certain. His entire campaign has been that he's not Trump, touting support from conservatives while slamming Bernie's base at every turn. The first debate between them was a hot mess, too, with Trump dominating every second with an endless string of lies, while Biden stammered his way through, trying to make a point. He couldn't even combat Trump's non-answer on the horrendous handling of the pandemic or the issue of election integrity. 215,000 Americans dead, and an economic crisis should have been a slam dunk for the Biden camp. And now, still plagued with a highly infectious disease, Trump is refusing to debate unless he can infect Joe Biden in person. So as of now, the next debate is canceled. Polls are neck and neck in battleground states, but things could still take a dramatic turn as COVID continues to ravage the White House and the president.
Welcome back. The lifting of an international embargo on October 18, allowing Iran to buy and sell military hardware, will be remembered as the day of the U.S. defeat, Iranian Foreign Minister spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said on Monday. The ministry spokesman also declared victory over Washington's maniacal sanctions, arguing that the U.S. became too reliant on economic warfare to pursue its foreign political agenda, and has as a result eroded the effectiveness of such restrictions. The sanctions prompt Iran to develop foreign trade that was free of U.S. interference, Khatibzadeh added. Earlier this month, the U.S. Treasury Department announced the blacklisting of 18 major Iranian banks in a new attempt to exclude the country from the global financial system. Tehran condemned the move as economic terrorism. And more stories are coming out. Please stay with us. And we are back. Armenia's foreign minister visited Moscow on Monday for talks with Russian counterpart on a ceasefire deal brokered by Russia to end hostilities in the separatist territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. The ceasefire came into effect on Saturday, but was immediately changed by claims of violations by both Armenia and Azerbaijan that persisted throughout the weekend and continued on Monday morning. Lavrov added Russia expects to close the contacts with Armenian and Azerbaijan officials, and it will ensure full compliance with the agreements that were reached in a trilateral format. Armenia's Foreign Minister Sorbak Masenayan, meanwhile, thanked Russia for his role in the ceasefire agreement, adding that the role of Russia in this remains very important.
We reached an important agreement last Saturday, initiated by President Putin, but we see that this agreement is not being fully complied with and the fighting is continuing. We expect that our contacts with you and our Azerbaijani neighbors, including by our defense ministries, will ensure full compliance with the agreements that were reached in a trilateral format. We greatly value your personal contribution and the contribution of the Russian Federation and the Russian President in reaching this agreement. We must ensure an end to the fighting. The role of Russia in this remains very important. Unfortunately, we cannot say the ceasefire has been fully implemented at this time. Just before our meeting here, we continue to receive information that Azerbaijan is not complying with its obligations under the ceasefire.
India reported a total of 7,122,862 cases of COVID-19 and over 100,000 deaths from COVID-19, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare informed on Monday. In the last 24 hours, the Asian country reported over 66,732 new infections, and at least 816 people died in the last 24 hours due to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, causing the disease. Meanwhile, some 6 million people have recovered from the deadly virus. The national recovery rate rose to 19.9%, and the mortality rate fell 2%. India is the second hardest hit country globally in terms of COVID-19 cases after the United States, and ranks third worldwide regarding the death toll, preceded only by Brazil. Syria reported on Monday 45 new patients, totaling 4,700 COVID-19 cases, according to the Ministry of Health. 1,200 people have recovered from the disease. The country keeps its border closed, and also restrictions at workplaces, commercial centers, service centers, and religious institutions, as well as in vehicle mobility among the provinces. Prevention measures also continue at all teaching levels, and the Ministry of Education urged the population to respect the established regulations. Mass cultural gatherings and sporting events are banned. On Monday, Turkey will be redeploying the search ship for gas exploration to the Eastern Mediterranean. The Turkish Navy announced that the Oruxis ship will carry out activities in the region, including the south of Castellorizo, until October 22nd. Two other ships, the Ataman and Saint Hans, will join the research vessel in the latest seismic survey mission. Turkish Energy Minister Faiz Dönmez said that Turkey will continue to search, dig and protect its rights. Greece's Foreign Minister described the move as a direct threat to the regional peace and security and accused Turkey of being unreliable. And Americans Paul R. Milgrom and Robert B. Wilson will have won the Nobel Prize in Economics for improvements to action theory and inventions of new action formats. The winners were announced on Monday in Stockholm by Göran Hansson, Secretary General of the Royal Swedish Academy of Science. The awards come as much of the world experiences the worst recession since World War II because of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Technically known as the Sveriges Riksbank Prize, the economic science in memory of Alfred Nobel, the award was established in 1969 and is now widely considered one of the Nobel Prizes. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And also you can join us in social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.